My guest today is Joe Lombardi. Joe is the executive director for the Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio, or SWACO. SWACO manages the landfill here in Franklin County where all of our trash goes. I was really curious about the inner workings of the landfill, like how much trash it gets from people in the city, what happens when the landfill eventually closes, along with other programs they have right now to reduce waste that goes into it. I had recently read something from one of our local media outlets that talked about how the landfill only had roughly 40-ish years left. And with Franklin County's population increasing, I was wondering what the future of the landfill looked like. In this episode, we talk about that, along with some of those programs, some of those things they have coming up in the near future, and even just how SWACO works in general. All that and a lot more on this Chronicle of the Columbus Chronicle. Before we start talking all about trash, do you ever get confused since your name's Joe Lombardi?
I do. I get a lot of questions. Are you related? And are you the grandson of the coach and that sort of thing? And I always say no because I've really never checked it out. But yes, I get that a lot. So it doesn't bother me. It does.
Well, Joe, I appreciate you taking the time to come by and chat.
Yeah.
This episode is going to be all about trash,
Okay.
which is what I'm kind of excited to talk about. So, I think to start off at a very high level, um, what is the Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio?
Yeah. So I'll take you way back a little bit. I'll give you a history lesson. In the late 1980s, 1988, 89, the state of Ohio was trying to stop the amount of waste that was coming in from out of state into Ohio. We kind of became the trash bin for out of state trash. So they created a House bill, I want to say it's 182, that created 52 distinct districts, waste districts in Ohio. And we are one of those 52 districts that are in Ohio. But some districts are just, the bill was meant to figure out how to divert material away from the landfill, so create education and recycling programs. So many of your districts around Ohio just do that. They just do the education and the recycling. And the landfills are owned and operated by private sector haulers, your Rumpke's, your Waste Management, so on and so forth. Columbus decided what they were going to do is become an authority and own and operate the landfill. So it's a public asset. It is not owned or operated by anybody privately. So we um, we are the solid waste management district for all of Franklin County. So every community in Franklin County, which is 41 communities, the trash must come to us. For your listeners and your viewers, we do not pick up. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear in case something happens with your trash not being picked up. We don't pick up. We're just the intake. We also own two transfer stations, one on Jackson Pike, just right down the road, and then one out of Morris Road. But we also provide all kinds of recycling and educational campaigns for our residents, for our communities. We provide grants. So we do everything that a normal district doesn't do. So we own and operate the landfill and the transfer, plus we do all the education and all the recycling campaigns that most districts do around Ohio.
And that's what I had read was that we're unique in that regard. And thank you for the clarification because my trash lately has been all over the place in terms of the schedule. So I appreciate the clarification. I am curious. I want to go back. You were given a bit of a history lesson there. How did Ohio become essentially was it just we were financially incentivized to do so? What was the
I've never really looked at. That's a great question. I'll have to go back and start to look at that. But what I think is because of how we're located, kind of central in that Midwest. We're close to New York and Pennsylvania and states like that. So, and we had a lot of rail, especially in our northern part of Ohio, and it was cheaper. for them, right? It was cheaper just to, hey, let's go bring it to Ohio. It's cheaper because we're running out of room here in New York or Pennsylvania. So let's just truck it over. And that's what they did. And so the state said, okay, enough's enough. Right. And so we're gonna create districts and we're gonna try to combat all this outside waste that's coming in. So
Hmm. So to follow up with that then, obviously Columbus alone in this region, I assume produces a decent amount of trash. I would be very curious to know some of the numbers that you guys see, like whether it be over the year or a decade or whatever numbers you have. I'm very curious to know.
So I'll try to break it down by tonnage. So in a year's time, our landfill brings in 1.2 million tons of waste each year. That equates to about 4,000 tons a day. Um, that is a lot. That is a lot. We are currently working on a study to try to see what it is per capita. So, what is each person personally contributing to that waste? So, but the interesting part about that, what people don't realize, is we do a waste characterization study about once every 3 to 5 years, where we actually have a consultant come out and take a look at the waste and see what's the big numbers, which ones are the biggest. And, most people think, oh, it's plastic, oh, it's cardboard. Actually, it's food waste.
Really?
So food waste represents 15% of all that waste that comes into our landfill. Not to say there's a lot of cardboard and plastic up there. We'd love to get you out to see it. Um, but 76% of what comes in doesn't even need to be there. It could have been recycled, reused, repurposed. So that's our mission, to get some of that out of there and to reuse it, repurpose it, and recycle it. So those are the big numbers. We serve over 1.2 million people. So you kind of can do the math. Maybe it's 1 pound per person, but I think it's a little bit higher than that. And it's a costly business, and we only have one landfill in Central Ohio. So that's our asset. That is a community asset. That is something that we have to preserve. And I've said this before. I don't, it won't be my new tagline, but I've said it and I kind of like this. I'll say it on your podcast is, we have one body, we have one earth, and we have one landfill. So we need to take care of all three of them. So that's my new tagline if it becomes popular. So
That's funny. Funny enough, I have been to, the landfill multiple times from when I had, bulk loads to take over, and I just have to tell you this funny story because I had rented a U-Haul to haul off. We had been doing some work on this house, was taking off the trash, and apparently since a U-Haul is not a truck, you can't back it up to the dump off things, so I actually was driving up to the landfill and, like, unloading the back of it next to the dump truck. There was I just had to share that I have been feet on the ground in your landfill, so
well, great to have you out. Anytime you want to come back out, we'll do it again, and we can kind of get you a deep dive. But and really, you make a great point about the U-Haul because we had to open. So we call it the open face or the working face. That's where we're actually dumping the waste that day. And we've had to have two now, one for our commercial haulers and one for what I would call our mom and pop shops that are doing a lot of renovations. They do, if your kitchen needs redone, someone comes and there were just so many of those coming now. And I think since COVID, a lot of people are now working from home. They've got time to renovate their homes. So they hire out the company to do it. And the commercial haul, those are big trucks, and you're coming in with a pickup truck and a trailer, it gets a little scary. So we said, hey, to make sure it's safe, let's send the traffic of the commercial one way and then the residential another way. This way, the commercial guys aren't getting upset because they're waiting on me
yeah.
and you to dump a
My
few little
U-Haul trying to
right,
yeah, yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. So
That's funny. So I'm really curious, like, the behind the scenes, like, what goes in I know there's probably a ton of things, but on a high level, what goes into managing and running a landfill?
Well, it's a great question. It's a little more than people think. That's why I always encourage anybody that talks to me about, hey, come out to the landfill. Let's take you a tour of that so that you can see. exactly what happened. So when I first started, I thought all we did was there was a big hole, we threw it in there, we ran it over, and we threw some more, and we kept running it over until we filled the place up. But it's really an engineering marvel, I would say. So what happens is we have a build out plan all the way through 2062. So we know each time we're working there every day, what part of that landfill are we going to be working in so that we don't create a situation where it gets too high in one area, gets too low in another. So we kind of work around it so that we're always staying on top. And there's, the EPA will only allow you so much airspace. And so we have to be cognizant of that every day that we can't, once we get to that airspace limit, it's it. So what we do is it's if you could picture a mole, so you kind of build the outside of it first and then begin to bring it in slowly and then inside. So each day, the men and women who work in our landfill, you come in, you go through the gate. There's a road and there's signs that tell you where you're heading today. A lot of times it's probably for a good week that you'll be going to the same location. Truck will go up there, it will dump the waste, and then there's compactors that go over top of it and continually smash it down. So just like your trash can, the more you push down, the more I can get in my trash can. But it's not just as simple as, "Hey, let's just run this over." It's like a dance up there. If you go up there, it's pretty interesting. They got GPS, so they can understand where how it's leveling out and how it's not. They'll tell the bulldozer operator to push waste to a certain area, then to another certain area, so they wanna keep it level. This goes on all day from, like, 5 in the morning until, like, 5 at night. I've never been there at 5 in the morning, but, I keep saying I wanna get there just to see how many trucks are coming in at 5 in the morning, and apparently there's a lot because a lot are picking up commercial waste, so they're picking up your restaurants and your Kmart's and oh, Kmart's not even around anymore. Look, I just aged myself. I did it. Woo! And then, but they're picking up the commercials, so they're getting there early in the morning, but it's really a dance up there. It's really more about engineering, making sure that, the waste is level and the waste is being input. And then at night, by rule, we have to put a daily cover over it. So what we do is we spray. It's almost like if have you ever you've seen like there was plenty of construction going on in Columbus where they put the grass back down and there's that big spray. It's sort of like that, but it's almost like a soft concrete that keeps it settled at night because we don't want that stuff blowing on the 71. And being an urban landfill is not the easiest. We're right in the backyard of Grove City. So we are trying to be good neighbors to our friends in Grove City and to the people that are driving on 71 and 665. So
Yeah. So you bring up a good point because it is an urban landfill, and I guess I don't know the data of like where landfills are located across the state. But what are some of those challenges that come with, like you said, I mean, you're a stone's throw away from a lot of people and communities.
yeah. Well, the big one is, from, you're working in trash. So on a windy day, as you can imagine, some of that's going to blow out on the 665 and on the 71. And so we do our part by having staff go and clean the litter that's on 71, basically between Stringtown Road and 665. We do that as a good neighbor agreement with Grove City, and we also try to keep 665 clean. On wet days, that's a little harder, a lot of mud, so we get, it gets dirty. Um, every once in a great while, now this is what I tell people, every once in a great while, there's a thing called a smell that comes from a landfill. Um, and we try to make sure that, we keep that down to a minimum, and so, we work a lot with our folks in Grove City. They'll send if a neighbor of theirs complains or whatever, we'll make sure we address that quickly for them. So plus you have a lot of traffic, as you can imagine. On 665, many moons ago was just basically nothing, and you could just fly down through there. Now you got, you got the Mount Carmel that's over there now. It's really built up off of 665. So you got big trucks that are coming in and out. So to try to maneuver all that traffic to make sure that everybody is safe, and that's really important to us, safety. I mean, in the waste management industry, I believe is the fourth most dangerous occupation in the country. I think when you take out military, and I think even police and fire, if you take those out, we're the fourth most dangerous industry in the country.
You mentioned your plans through like basically 2062. Is that what you said? I think I read an article, it was earlier this year. And I'm gonna get this wrong, so please correct me. That the landfill, our current landfill had something of like a 40-ish year runway.
Yeah.
What happens?
Okay,
Well,
so
yeah, well, tell me more.
So I'll tell you how we got there. So in 2016, 17, we knew we had to expand that landfill. And so when you do that, anytime you expand your operation, you have to do a what they call permit to install or PTI, it takes about a year to get that done. You basically have to draw out a map that this is what we're going to do. This is where we're going to put stuff. This is how it's going to look. Um, if you have to buy property or anything like that, this is the property that we have to buy, and you have to do community outreach. It's a task to get that. That has to go to the Ohio EPA. They can deny it or they can accept it. So we were pretty fortunate. And I'll pat our staff on the back. The work that we do, a lot of other landfills and a lot of other districts, when they talk to the EPA sends them to us about how we operate as a model. So going back to the PTI, we got that approved. So with what we're going to do, that added an additional 40 years to the life of that landfill. Now I say that with a caveat. Those numbers were based on the population in 2018. And it was also a different time, right? And so I always tell people, because they go, "Oh, 2062, well, we have all kinds of time." Well, that was in 2018. So what we do probably once a year, we keep looking at that to make sure that 2062 number is still good, because the more people are coming to Columbus, as you've read and the more waste that creates, the less time that landfill has. So we have to do everything we can to provide education and diversion, the convenience, right? That's what people want. A lot of people in Columbus are great. They're great people. Most of the people in Columbus, I would say. I shouldn't say it that way, but they want to do the right thing, and they just want to know how, and they want to know where. I'd love to be able to do that, but where do I take it? So one of the things that we're trying to do is to find ways to make it more convenient for you and for your neighbors and for all these 41 communities, because, you know, we can't preach it and then not help it. So we're doing what we can to try to educate people on how to do that. But that's how we got the 40 years. I mean, I kind of digressed a little bit, but that's how we got.
No, that's a great segue because I'm very curious about the different initiatives you guys do,
Yeah.
and the ways that people, companies, whatever in the city can cut back on that waste. Like you mentioned, food scraps and others. At a high level, talk to me about some of the things you guys have got going on.
Yeah, so some of our what I'll call our legacy programs are Recycle Right, Save More Than Food, and those are really educational campaigns that educate communities, businesses, schools, residents on how to recycle correctly, what can be recycled, how to recycle it correctly, food waste, what to do with your leftovers, and we actually have a guide on how to preserve your food, how to freeze certain things, how long will they stay frozen. Um, you know, We have food waste drop-offs where you can bring your food scraps and drop off. A lot of communities have 'em. I think we're up to nearly, I wanna say 30-ish around, Columbus. And so those are 2 legacy ones that are really in education. We also started to push, choose to reuse, which is really the more important thing is the reduce. Reduce the waste that you provide to that landfill. So when you shop your list. You're not like me. If you give me a list, I'm gonna buy what's on the list, but I'm probably gonna buy a few other things, right? Well, and then I don't eat it, and then what happens, right? So shop correctly. Make food enough for your Thanksgiving dinner, not for your neighbors and your neighbor's neighbor, you know? We also to choose or reuse is, you know, how can I reuse this table? How can I reuse this chair? Maybe donating clothes to your local Goodwill or Salvation Army or, you know, uh, so that's the choose to reuse. It's really about the reusing bags at your grocery store as opposed to using the one your plastic bottles, which are just everywhere, right? Use a cup that you can continually use. But the big one I wanted to talk about is we just rolled out last year, and we're really gonna hit it hard this year, is our green print action plan, which really addresses what I would call big impact, diversion. So you're looking at hard to recycle materials, mattresses, textiles, food waste. So what we're going to do is we've rolled out this action plan to start to address those more hard to recycled materials, whether that means an additional food waste drop-offs. We've created convenience centers. We have one on Jackson Pike. The city of Columbus has 2 of them. They have one at Allen Creek and one on Georgesville Road. So we've got the Southwest covered. It's time for us to branch out and get them elsewhere. So these convenience centers, you can bring your batteries, you can bring your light bulbs, your old TVs, your old VCRs if you still own one, you know, just your e-waste, scrap metal. And so that gets it out of the landfill. And we have contracts where this is safely disposed of. So I wanna encourage our communities to put more of those convenience centers in their community so that their people do not have to come all the way to Jackson Pike. They can go right down the street. Mattress recycling, that's complex. It's there's a lot of mattresses in Columbus, Ohio. If you think of just, homes alone, but, you start thinking about the universities and you start thinking about hospitals and hotels. So we're going to search for a pilot project on how we can recycle. We know you can. We know there's companies that do it. We just don't know the volume that we're going to get. I think the statistic I read was that take your population, take it times 4%, and that's about how many mattresses you'll see. So for us, it's about 50,000 in a year. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg. And then, we're also going to push the food waste. We have a cool opportunity to put this new technology, I'll call it, um, and we're going to pilot it in a couple locations. Basically, it's a rail car, and inside there is an auger, and you put your food waste and your yard waste in there, and it does it by itself, and it doesn't. There's hardly any smell. It's very quiet. It creates compost within like 21 to 30 days. And now it's not going to create a bunch to where, we're going to be the compost king, but maybe we put them in communities and say, hey, once we have a product, maybe we give it back to you and you can put it in your landscaping at your library or at your city hall. So, pretty excited about what Green Print can do for Columbus. I think our team is ready that challenge. So those are some of the big things that we're doing. I so much we can do. We only have so many people, so we have to. What what I'm looking at what gives us the biggest impact. And that's really what we're trying to do.
Right. Okay. Kind of follow-up question, and I think you might hit on it a little bit, but this is I sometimes will ask some of my friends, like, "What questions do you guys?" Because I am also curious. If I have stuff like batteries, paint, the hazardous stuff, I I know I could probably just Google this, but, like, how do I dispose of that? What is the easiest way to get that out of my house?
So there's a couple ways. First of all, don't put them in your trash. We appreciate that. Batteries are the most dangerous thing we deal with. You probably read they, especially the lithium, and they're in everything. And batteries cause a lot of problems, fires. Number one. But to answer your question, any one of our convenience centers, you can bring your batteries and your paint to our convenience center on Jackson Pike. We also, and I forgot to mention, we also have a permanent household hazardous waste location on Essex Road out near basically the fairgrounds area. They'll take oils, they'll take paint, battery, pesticides, things like that. We won't take the pesticides and some of the more dangerous um, household hazardous waste, but they will, and then they dispose of it. There's also probably 3 or 4 times a year, many communities do a household hazardous waste event where you can drive up. They'll take it right out of your trunk and you move on, so it's like a drive-through, and we really like to look at that too, that whole household hazardous waste program. How do we expand it? Maybe do we do something like at the state fairgrounds for a day or 2 and have a bunch of people come at one time and dispose of it? But I would definitely take it to one of those. But if people really wanna know what to do, whether it's recycling or what do I do with this, go to swaco.org. We have a ton of resources. If they get into, especially in our diversion tab, there's all kinds of information in there for folks that wanna know what to do, and we also, you can just search it right on our website. You can type in batteries, and it'll just give you a list of all the different links that we have in there about what to do with batteries and educate people about how to dispose of batteries and light bulbs and things like that. So I can't say enough about that website. It's great. Our communications team and our programs team, they do a great job of keeping that thing updated. There's so much on there, so much on there. It's crazy how much is on there.
I have perused it, I have perused it. Another question, and this is more I'm very curious how it works because you mentioned, how you guys work with Ohio EPA. How does kind of I don't know if governance is the right word, but how do those relationships work with, like, Ohio, EPA, City of Columbus? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so the Ohio EPA is really the regulatory department for all the state of Ohio. So, for all those districts we talked about earlier, they're the oversight committee. Then each district will have a health department that is also responsible for monitoring what's going on at the landfill. So for us, it's the Franklin County Department of Health because we serve all of Franklin County. And then Columbus, has its own health department. It also has its own refuse department. So they control just the core city of Columbus. When you're talking about your suburban communities, Hilliard or Westerville or Whitehall, they're usually contracted with the private sector haulers, so they will pick up for them. But overall, the Ohio EPA still has oversight in the health. The Franklin County Department of Health has oversight of our business. But in terms of relationships, you know, I have to be a friend to 41 different communities. And so we work with each one of them. We partner a lot with a lot of our communities. We provide grants to help them offset some of the costs for a program. So, for example, if Gahanna wanted to do a curbside recycling, they just don't have the resources to buy everybody a cart. We'll provide them up to $35,000 in a what we call the community waste reduction grant, and that'll help offset some of those costs. We also have a grant for events. So like the Jazz and Rib Fest, we do some work with them, and the arts festival, we do things for them. My greatest moment is we did a pilot project for food waste at the most recent Nelly concert that was here this summer. What a great time that was. My kids thought I was nuts when I found out who Nelly was, and found out that I actually knew his songs and I didn't know it was him. So, to be able to help out the Columbus Commons and the downtown area, it was great. But yeah, what a great time that was. So got to help Nelly out with his food waste, I guess.
I was gonna say, probably the last thing if you would ask what we would've been talking about in this podcast
I
would be
was not
Nelly, yeah, talking about the landfill. Um, I'm curious how okay, I'm gonna butcher how I'm wanting to ask this question. When the landfill eventually, you know, closes and one day, what goes on after that?
Okay.
What happens? How do you manage that?
So that's hopefully we won't see that, but when the day comes, we will still have to be responsible for the management of that landfill because there's still going to be active methane in there. So we'll still have to make sure we manage it. For example, the old landfill, what we used to call the model landfill, which I don't know how long you've been in Columbus. It used to be a golf course. We turned it into a golf course. It didn't work out. I kind of wish we'd resurrect it. I'm a golfer, but I doubt it. But we still manage that. It's been closed for decades, but we have to manage it. We have to make sure we have to maintain the gas wells there. So that's what, first and foremost, we would still be responsible for what's going on there. But for our residents, we're gonna have to probably either site a new place, which in Columbus and Franklin County, there's not going to be a whole lot of places left to site, that many acres. So we're probably gonna have to take it to an outside county, which if you're being charged for trash and recycling, that's going to get costly because now your haulers are going to have to take it outside the county and they're going to have to, someone's going to have to pay for that. So, which is why we always preach that it's a community asset. It is a public asset. And after being in this business for, almost 4 years now and being in different conferences, I believe when the public entity owns and operates a landfill, it's completely different than the private sector. And I'm not knocking our private sector folks, but there's just a little bit more care. And I don't mean they don't take care because they have to follow the same rules we do, but because we know it's a public asset, right? And so, and because of that, our rates at our landfill are probably well, I'm not even gonna say probably, they are our lowest in Ohio, if not the Midwest. I mean, we're only charging $38, $39 a ton, where some places are charging 60 and $70 a ton. You go out west, it's crazy numbers out west. They're charging like $150 a ton for these haulers. So that's because we try to keep our costs low because of a public entity. We try to be stewards of the dollars that we give from our landfill. So, and we don't take tax dollars. We take zero tax dollars. Our entire revenue stream is our fees that we charge for our landfill. So, that's what would happen. I mean, it would close. We'd have to maintain it, and then that trash has to go somewhere else, which could get costly for our customers.
Okay. So I'm very curious then, because it sounds like you're doing all these initiatives to bring less into landfill, which is great. But that in turn is less money coming into you guys. I will say, I'm not saying that like, oh, I'm very glad that there's an emphasis on getting it out. But how does that work for you all? That it's basically we're trying to get less in here, but that is our revenue stream.
Yeah, yeah, it is a double-edged sword. Yeah, I get asked that a lot. Why are you you're taking money out of your own pocket? But
I mean, it's a great thing. Don't get
yeah,
me wrong.
no,
I'm
no,
very
it is.
happy
No,
about it.
you're right. No, you're right. Because it's the right thing to do. It's to try to save waste from coming in there and for the environment and economically. Going back to food waste. An average household spends over $2,000 a year of food that they don't even eat that is thrown away. So, and then there's the whole circular economy thing where if we can get some of that material out into companies who use recycled material or making recycled products, we keep the economy moving as well. So, yeah, I mean, diversion, we're taking money out, but you know, it's real. But we also diversify our revenue, even though 80% of our revenue comes from our landfill tipping fees. We also have a partnership with a private company who's on our property called Archaea Energy. They've recently been bought out by BP, but so we pull all that methane and we send it through a pipeline to them. They clean it and put it right back out into the natural gas pipeline. So we get some money from them as well. Not quite the money we're getting from the landfill fees, but it helps us not rely just solely on our landfill fees. So we diversify as much revenue as we can, um, but we do think it's more important to divert the material out of there because again, I'll go back and I know I've said it at least twice today is that's the only landfill we have here, and I listen. We have a 1.2 million people. We're going to have a heck of a lot more by the time I leave. We'll have a lot more even after I leave. I'm in the behavior change business. It's not very easy. I'm probably not going to change 1.2 million people's minds, but if I can nickel and dime it and I can change a heart here and there, we've done our job. So, and I say that to say, you know, that to us, that's our mission. Our mission is to divert as much material away from that landfill. And yes, we may, depending on how good we are, if we're really good, we may have to raise the rates, right? Just because, hey, we're actually just hurt ourselves. But well, I hope that day comes. I hope that day comes where I have to make that decision on we're not getting enough waste coming in. It's now costing us money. So
Yeah. How a question about you. How did you get involved? Like, what made you go, "Yeah,
yeah,
trash."
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll try to make this as short as possible. As you can tell, I'm an introvert, so
You're doing great.
yeah.
Great.
So I started working for the city of Columbus in 1990. And I was in their procurement office, and I was there for about 10 years. And I thought, man, this is I like public procurement. So I really thought that that's what I would do for my whole life. And then as things happen, I was able to get an opportunity to work in the Department of Public Utilities. Um, and I was in their fiscal area of purchasing, budgeting for 15 years. Started out as just, kind of a staff member. And then I got promoted a couple times, ended up as the assistant director over all the fiscal management for the public utilities department. And then um, one day, a gentleman by the name of Andrew J. Ginther got elected mayor, and unbeknownst to me and surprise, I was asked if I wanted to serve as his Department of Finance director. Sure. You don't say no, right? And so I'm like, sure. I was so surprised. I'm like, yeah, where did I come out of this, right? So that led me to being on the board of SWACO. So the city of Columbus has two appointments to the board. One is the mayor or his designee, and then an appointment from the mayor. So he appointed me to that board, and I really never knew what SWACO did. And I'm like, this is really interesting because, like most people, I thought it's just this big hill off of 71 that they just put stuff in, and they. So I spent 5 years as a board member, and then my predecessor, Ty Marsh, who I had known from the days when he was chief of staff for Mayor Coleman, was the director there, and he was going to retire. And I've got a couple friends that I call trusted advisors and mentors who called me and said, you should think about that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I said, I got 32 years with the city of Columbus. I'm loving life. I like the job. I don't think the mayor doesn't like me. Um, why would I do that? And they're like, hey man, take all that 32 years of your knowledge and your leadership and put it to use in an organization where you can lead, right? And you can lead the whole organization. I'm like, I don't know. So I thought about it. So I stepped down from the board as I was thinking about it because I did not want to have any conflict of interest. So I decided to put in for and say, we'll see what happens, right? So talk to those friends over and over again, and next thing you know, I get the job, and I thought to myself, what did I do? Why did I do this? It's like starting over, and the man, I've had a great time. I mean, I've had a ball. I've got some really, really great people that work for me, and they they have been nothing but great to work with. Scott Perry, who serves as our assistant executive director, has been in the business for over 20 years, has taught me more about the business than any magazine or conference can teach you. And our programs folks, just the passion that they have for, what they do in trying to, make us environmentally sustainable here in Columbus. You just start to feel it, like you're like, this is a group of people that nobody really we're kind of like unknown, but we're doing a lot of damn good work, right? But I just really got into it, and I've always been that way. There's a lot of things my wife will say about me that uh, I won't say on your podcast, but the one thing she always says about me is she says, you take on a challenge and you immediately start to learn it. And that's what I think helped me. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to learn about it. I'm just not going to be a figurehead. I'm going to actually learn this stuff. And the more and more I learned about it, the more and more I was like, this is cooler than I thought. This is bigger than I thought. So that's how I got there. It's a long way to get there, but that's how I got there, and I really enjoy it. I really enjoy working with the people every day, and you couldn't ask for a more passionate, caring group. But pretty tight knit. But yeah, so and the one thing that plays on my personality and my strengths is when I did get the job, the board had asked for me to be more of a community leader and to be out in the community more and to promote what we're doing. I'm like, check, because I like talking, as you can see. Yeah, I like shooting the bull with folks, but and educating them, and so for that, that's great because I have, like I said, Scott, who kind of runs the day to day internally. That gives me an opportunity to do things like this with you and go to different events and talk to other community leaders and try to convince them to support our mission. And so, yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. That's how I got there. I was gonna be a vet. That was gonna actually be my when I was
Really?
yeah, when I was in high school, I wanted to be a vet, and I only wanted to do dogs. I didn't wanna do cats and birds and turtles and those sort of things, so, then I found out it's a vet is really a doctor that you have to go, like, a lot of school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Ooh, that's like a lot of schooling," so I decided not to be a vet, so
That's too funny.
yeah.
I have 2 questions, and then the floor is yours to leave any, plugs, all that stuff. When I always ask people this, when you look at the future of Columbus and generally, let's just do Central Ohio too, what excites you and what concerns you?
Yeah. What excites me is about Columbus is the growth, having been born and raised here in Columbus, to see the transformation of Columbus is awesome. And I love seeing the younger generation coming into different neighborhoods that used to thrive years and years ago and trying to revitalize those neighborhoods again. I think that is so cool to see as an old guy who's been here from day one. And it excites me that we're doing it the right way in Columbus. You know, you've heard horror stories about the Portlands and the Austins and how they just went crazy, but then they didn't think about the ramifications. I know we have our issues. I know there's housing and there's that sort of thing, but I think Columbus is interesting. I tell people this all the time. Columbus, and you hear, different folks that are public officials say the Columbus way, and it's true. I mean, it's not a tagline. It's an interesting city where both private and public sector, when it matters and it means something, come together and really try to get it done. So that excites me that people are still wanting to come to Old Columbus, Ohio, known as a cow town years ago, right? That what do you do after 5 o'clock in Columbus? You go home, right? That's what it used to be. So that excites me and the things that we're doing here. But what worries me is that exact same thing. We have a lot of people coming, and that for me, that keeps me up at night wondering, how do I get ahead of all these statistics that I hear from the Morpsies of the world and saying we're going to have this many more people by this date, how do we stay ahead of that? And that's why we talk about Greenprint. That was part of the reason why Greenprint got um, developed, was because we had to find a way to start now on addressing things that, at one time was probably just sitting in the background going, yeah, it's a nice thing. But now you got a big population, and we have to educate. We have to, that's more people we have to educate. That's more people that we have to do campaigns with to do the right thing. And one of the things that we're going to be looking at is an ambassador program where we put residents in our different communities through a training about what we do, about recycling, about choose to reuse, about all this stuff that we're doing, and make them our ambassadors out in the community. So basically, kind of our mission folks, and send them out there and have them help us with our mission. So that's one of the ways we're trying to say. But the growth is great, and it's also worrisome for a person like me that's in the business that we're in. But I'm looking forward to that. So what was the other?
No. I'm about to follow up with it, and this one's gonna be a little bit harder because we've been talking about trash the whole time. But in Columbus and Central Ohio, your favorite places to eat, drink, go
Yeah,
hang out.
yeah. So, I'm I really got a couple places that I like to go to eat. I really like High Banks. I've never had a bad meal there. They're really good. I like them. For lunch, sometimes it's a heavy lunch, but I do like go to Tommy's Diner, and that might be it for the day. That might be the only meal. In the Cap City, I've never gone wrong at Cap City. So those are the kind of 2, 3 places. I loved Milestone 229. I hated to see them go. That was my kind of go-to for lunch, especially if I had to come back. That was the one thing I like about SWACO. I'm not downtown, but now when you come downtown, you're like, oh, I gotta find parking. But it's been great. Just to hang out and drink. I'm non-biased there. If anybody wants to invite me to go have a drink, I'll go wherever you want to go. Um, you know, I kind of I do like some of the brewers that are around here now, and I'm a domestic beer guy, so breweries. I like their food, but I do enjoy. Yeah, I live near the Hilliard area, so I do like going to the Crooked Can, and I like seeing, like, things when I was that age, 30-ish. We just didn't have that, we just didn't have those cool places where a lot of people just hang out, bring your dog, and watch sports, and you can sit outside and really cool stuff like that. So it's kind of neat to go places like that. But a lot of times I like just to hang out at home, just be Joe.
Love it. Okay, Joe, the floor is yours. Give any of the plugs. Where can people learn more about SWACO? Where can people learn more about Greenprint? Where can people learn more about everything?
Well, I'll start with the first thing they need to do is just go to swaco.org. first thing you do. Go there and just play around on the website, find all kinds of information. I would also encourage them to go to Save More Than Food, where they can pick up a lot of great tips on food waste and how to preserve food and how to shop correctly. We have a food guide on there, a food storage guide, which is really cool. They can also go to just type in choose to reuse to see what we're doing there. They can type in green print, stuff there that they can do. But I really here's what I really tell people is, you have your your champion recyclers. They're doing all the right things and they're have been doing it right. And then you have the majority of the people are in the middle, right? They want to do the right thing. They just want to know how and why and what do I do with it? And then you have those that they're still skepticals. There's still skepticism. They don't think it's really happening. They don't really think recycling is true. And I can assure you that it is. If Rumpke just built a $109 million material recycling facility out off of 670. And I don't think Rumpke would spend $100+ million on a facility if it wasn't true, right? I can't see them doing that. I don't think any business would do that. But I would just encourage people to just give it a try. If you're skeptical or, if for anything, let's do the right thing for the environment. Let's do it the right thing for the next generation. I'm a big proponent of getting into our schools. Our schools program is outstanding. So many school districts and just in Franklin County, it's crazy. And I love talking to the students because that's who we need to get to. We need to get to our younger people. We need to get them believing. I think more so than we were when I was a kid. I think kids today are really in tune with their city. I think they're in tune with their environment, and they're shaming us into doing things, right? So the more we can get to the students, the more they can get to their parents, and the more that those parents can do things for us is great. But I just give it a try. And in the worst case, get on our website, see what it takes. Everybody has a blue bin. I mean, 90% of households in Columbus and the surrounding suburban communities have a blue bin. Just put stuff in it. Just put the stuff in it, and even if it's just cardboard, glass, and cans and bottles, just put the stuff in there. And, every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. Just what I say, I'm changing hearts one person at a time, and that's what we try to do. So I'd leave with that. I just get to our website, SWACO.org, recycleright.org, Save More Than Food. And once you get on that website, if you just type in anything, you're going to find a plethora of information that will blow your mind. So,
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hunter, thanks for having me, man. This is great.